right now with a community in Tuscarawas Township. Maybe they're even here. Someone did a property transfer inspection for a family, and their E. coli count in their water well came back at 200. Has anybody here tested a water well that came back 200 on E. coli? That's almost raw sewage and groundwater, you know what I mean? So then the neighbor comes out and says, hey, would you mind testing my water well too? He tested high E. coli. We ended up testing a stretch of 7 houses, and we had high E. coli's and some high total coliforms right in this same vicinity. This area is on sanitary sewer, with the exception of one house. So guess he was getting the bullseye on his back. So there have been historical links in some cases when conditions are right with groundwater contamination linked to leach wells. So that's not a common occurrence that we've seen, but here's the perfect example when something like that happens. So anyway, we're currently investigating that.
Are we going to test that sewer line deep?
We have had it cambered already, and there's another section we want to have cambered. We also learned there were some mine collapses in the area, so we're looking at both that system and the sanitary sewer to see what exactly happened. Another point, if you, as installers or service providers, can put the word out as best as you can, we're trying to do the same. Mounds, it'd be best if people mow those. I was talking to an installer the other day about the groundhog problem in those mounds, and they can take care of that real quick with a 22 and a lawnmower. So if folks would try to make sure people are operating their mounds correctly and they're taking the time to maintain them, I think it's going to go a long way to save them money. So if you have that opportunity to do a little education, we'd appreciate that. That does seem to be a problem out there.
There's a flyer too on our website.
Yeah, I was going to mention this a bit later, but we have a bunch of educational flyers on our website, and I'll see if I can't pull that up here in a minute to show you what's available so you can point people to some educational materials. If you don't want to take the time to explain every nuance of the system, get online. We have some pretty good information there. I want to go over a couple things and this is the perfect time of year to start talking about this, freezing. We've come into some various issues out there for installation that there's been some concerns about freezing. Sometimes we might have gotten lucky in the past and things didn't freeze, but probably each of you have dealt with a freezing problem of some sort or another. You probably know more about it than we do because you hear it and I don't. But we do hear some things. So one example of what we've had here recently happen was, whether this be a pump system or a flout that's discharging gravity, is you see what's happening here.
She says she's here.
Okay, sorry about that. Sorry you can't see that. What's happening here is it's coming down the hill, and then they're coming back up underneath of it and feeding it. And you're getting a trap right here. You're trapping water inside of that. And the sensitive point is going to be certainly right here. Assuming the multi-zone valve is going to drain itself into the lines, here you're still going to have a sensitive point of freezing right here. So the question is, is that the best way to do this job? You're pumping downhill, which is not fun, and then you have, or maybe you're using a flout downhill, something like that. And then you have this water trapped in here, and you are going to lock water from the elevation of the bottom of the multi-zone valve clear up into the pipe where that elevation is equal. So what should we do about that? You might have a few options. If you have to go downhill, perhaps you move the multi-zone valve up the hill, catch it a little bit deeper, and then you're going to have a little bit longer lines coming out of it. Does that make sense? You want to not cause that to happen. I think this is a problem. Here's another reason it's a problem. I just had a debate with someone not too long ago about this situation, not only because it was a freezing concern, but I speculated you'd have this, I call it the double index on a multi-zone valve. What I thought was happening, I'm nearly certain we verified it does happen, is we had, I want to tell you, 200 feet of run from the tank down to the multi-zone valve. They locked up about 80 foot of water in the line. And you had another 120 foot of empty pump, air. So what happened is when that pump, it was a pump in that case, when the pump goes, it pushed this down, it pushed the first dose of water through it, the multi-zone valve seated and indexed, then came the air, up comes the plunger, then comes the water again, and seats again. It was skipping lines. We repeatedly were getting water in some lines and water not in other lines. Well, we were getting about half the system that wasn't actually getting water because of this double indexing effect. So there's another reason not to lock water up inside yet, Jim.
On a downhill thing like that, why would it need to be pumped anyway? Why wouldn't that be a gravity tile fill?
It was soil. It was the soil that dictated that. And then the installer chose to pump it down the hill. They could have used a different device. But this was the soil.
Just to cut down on the size or something, for what the flood does?
They were probably because of depth credits. They get those couple inches of depth credits to get it in the ground. Yeah, that's why it happened. So, in the mounds, I mean, the same thing can happen with a mound. But anyway, I believe this does happen. Now, I had another scenario where the elevation was a little bit different, and this is certainly not to scale or drawn correctly, but where the multi-zone valve was a little higher. And we had less air in the line. And it worked. And it never double indexed. Then we had another situation, we had a good slug of water, and a good slug of air in the line, and it was all the time, just indexing up when the air hit it, and indexing again. So we do want to watch out for that. So 2 reasons not to trap water under the multi-zone valve: freezing and the possibility of double indexing. So, any questions about that? Okay. This is the obvious, easy scenario. You're pumping uphill and you can drain everything back to the pump tank, or you are pumping or doing something down the hill, you want to drain everything out to the leach field that remains in this line. So we want to find ways to do that. Again, one way is to move everything up the hill. Yes, you have a little more extra pipe, but you'll stop this from happening. Another way that you have to be careful with this one. We had another job. An engineer did this, I think by accident, without him just thinking about it, was he created a situation where you had a belly in the line and he was pumping up to a mound. He actually set the pump tank at such an elevation, I'm going to call it the weep hole of the pump tank, so that he was, when it drained back, he drained back a portion of the water in the line, but not all of it. So he was keeping this full of water, and let's call that 36 inches or deeper, but he drained out some of the water in that. So there are ways to keep water inside the system if need be, if you have an odd topography that you're working with. So the main thing I want to point out here, we need to probably be more careful with the freezing issue. We see this a lot, and it's going to certainly at some point going to cause a problem with some of these. We have a pump tank on a timer. So the important part of this explanation is on a timer for whatever type of system it is. So let's say when the timer actuates the system, the enable switch is on, which would be this plug. And the water has gotten higher than the enable switch. Follow me so far? So the timer controls the pump run time, right? So the timer is going to say, run it for 2 minutes at 40 gallons a minute. Let's drop this thing 80 gallons, right? Here, let me do it this way. Okay, let's do this. So let's say that it dropped the 80 gallons in my example here, but the enable switch is still on. Or let's say in another situation, it comes down here and it's still on, but now it's not got the full dose. What I've heard is happening is that we are dosing less than what is required by the system. Because if a system has like an off switch and it's not entirely down, but it's somewhere in between the two, and it's not dosing the entire volume. So if you've designed your system for 120, let's say an 80 gallon dose, in my example, 80 gallon dose, and you only have 50 gallons left, it still runs and doses even though it wasn't at the right volume. Are you seeing this happen?
And what's wrong with that?
If you've got a mound, or if you've got LPP, 5 times the internal volume of the, now, flood dose, maybe not. But if you've got a mound, those things are designed to dose the entire length at 5 times the internal volume, and you don't have it. So what you have is you get water going in, probably isn't getting equal distributed, and shuts off.
And it's getting slimy in there.
So yeah, we're not getting the flush time. It's not so much with just a regular old pump system, or maybe even flood dose is probably not as sensitive to this. But when you get into the mounds, you get into LPP, it is really strictly defined on the volume that's supposed to be going up there. So if you don't have the 80, let's make it a bigger difference, Jim. Let's say it was supposed to be 150, and you're down here at 50. So you're barely getting enough water just to dribble out the holes when it shuts off. So that's where our concern is. So we want to make sure that anybody's distributing pumps in here, that they're checking their equipment, that this isn't happening. That will be a concern on some systems more than others, but it is a concern. All right, so if you're buying a pump, you may be asking a question on the control panel. Is your control panel going to do this, especially on mound? And we're going to probably be checking that a little more carefully in the future, not realizing that the control panel is allowing that to happen. Okay, before we get into some code issues, I would like to give you, just so you know where we're coming from on this, this has actually kind of been handed down to us by the Ohio EPA. I want to give you a few scenarios for NPDES permits when we have to, when the homeowner has to obtain those permits, and we have a closed sanitary sewer or the cost issues there. The way this will work is whenever a sanitary sewer is within 400 feet of the property, it has to be explored how to connect to that sanitary sewer before they're going to issue an off-lot discharge and permit for NPDES permit. So if those costs are astronomical, then we go ahead and do the discharge. One thing that we've encountered lately is if an individual is required to annex into a city in order to get to a sanitary sewer, even if it's 100 feet away, unless they want to, we view that as a legal barrier. Because I'm not in a position to want to make people annex into a city to get that service versus the NPDES permit. So I want to give you some information there. Annexation kind of throws a monkey wrench in. You can't get an easement to it, legal barrier. There might be some financial barriers. Sometimes we want to run into situations where, whether it be a on-lot system, or probably more commonly, it's when there's a sewer nearby and cost becomes the issue. How much cost is too much cost to have to connect the sewer? I mean, anybody here can connect to the sewer. It might cost you millions of dollars. But what about that person that's within 300 feet to that sewer and it's going to cost $15,000 or it's going to cost $20,000? Where is that line drawn? The line is here, passed down by our friends at the Ohio EPA. The cost comparison that we have to make, so let's say that off-lot discharge is $8,500, is we have to compare it to the most expensive system that we install in Stark County as the cost comparison. So, drip irrigation. That costs $20-ish thousand. So if your sanitary sewer connection is $15,000, and you could have put an aerator in for $8,500, EPA says no NPDES permit connect that sewer. The comparison is your highest costed system in your county that you install, which is, in our county, drip irrigation. So when it comes to cost, and you're wondering, what are we thinking when it comes to this stuff? Why didn't you say an NPDES permit was permissible here? It's because that's what's been handed to us by the Ohio EPA when it comes to cost. So we get close sometimes. There's been some, on the other hand, $24,000 with the aerator. It's higher than the cost of the drip. So that's where we kind of split those differences. To give you some time frames, this is the best information I have available. I think ODH was hoping they would have had the entire rule package out already, but they don't. They're thinking probably by the end of December there'll be an actual complete rule package for everybody to review, maybe early 2013. After that, there's going to be a final draft posted and a 60-day review and comment period before it goes to Public Health Council for adoption.